Con-Cern by a mad painter, aka T.R. Becker. Amy Rose leaned back, took off her reading glasses, set them on the desk and rubbed her eyes. They were sore. She had been staring at the monitor for hours. She looked at the clock. It was 2:30 a.m. Wow, she thought. She had never meant to be on the site so long. But there seemed to be a lot of more strange things going on as of late. It was good she didn't need to get up for a job in the morning. The way she felt, it would be noon before she would. Her website, Watching the Abyss, was one of the biggest sites on the web and was about anything that was strange. It had 1.2 million subscribers and 200,000 hits daily. She had a staff to deal with the work, but she still enjoyed going into the chat and talking with the members. None in there knew who she was because she used a pseudonym of Dark Lady. That way she was treated as everyone else on the web. The income from the site had given her a comfortable life and she wanted for nothing. So she spent a lot of her time on the net researching the leads on stories that the members were talking about. There was little to most of the subjects. There were some that she just had to look into. She was not really interested in UFOs, aliens, or even flat Earth. But if they were talking about demons, human sacrifices, transhumanism, time portals, or artificial intelligence, she was all over it. Most of the talk that night had been about CERN, the Large Hadron Collider, and how they were trying to open a portal into another dimension. The thought fascinated her that there were mainstream scientists who thought there were not only other dimensions, but they were trying to connect to them. But there were many who thought it was really the pit to hell they were trying to open up. She had checked the web, and there was no shortage of sites about this. Some even went as far as saying the whole bunch of scientists were all Satanists. There was even a statue of Shiva out front of the complex, and it was built on an old site of the Temple of Apollyon. Just these two things were strange enough, but add the fact that they admitted to wanting to open up a portal to another dimension just made it weirder. Scientists never stop to think if they should do what they are doing, they just do it. Few of them ever consider what could be the outcome in their quest for knowledge. She, like most, had no real clue of what a particle collider was, or what it did, or just why they used it. Particle physics was not a science that one learned in high school. The more she looked at CERN, she was convinced that there was far more to what was going on there than what they were telling the public. What was known as the Mandela effect was one of the strangest subjects being discussed and was thought to be because of the particle collider. Many remember things in different ways than what they are and believe that reality was changed or that two different dimensions had merged into one, and some were able to remember things that had changed. She set up a couple of web crawlers and decided she needed to get some sleep. She was not sure if there was anything to the Mandela effect, but she did have memories of things that now seemed different than when she was young, but she just thought it was faulty memory. She had seen nothing that explained how this could have happened using the collider. And the Large Hadron Collider was not the only one, just the biggest. A collider could bring a particle up to 95% plus the speed of light before guiding it into one moving in the opposite direction, so they could study what was like at the Big Bang. How colliding particles near the speed of light compared to what happened with the cosmic singularity known as the Big Bang made no real sense to her, but they were spending a lot of money doing it. She decided that she would have to look into where the money was coming from and what the payout on the investment was expected to be. After all, most research was about the payoff in the end. She laid down, but sleep did not come easy. There were way too many questions running through her mind. What she did know was this was a subject that needed to be looked into, and she was going to do it. When sleep came, it was full of dreams about time portals traveling demons out to kill mankind. For the next 2 weeks, Amy threw as much time as she could into her research, and the more she looked, the stranger things got. There were reports of people that vanished, but their fillings, plates, and pins used to fix broken bones would remain. She was not sure if this was real, but had found one newspaper article of a scientist that went missing a few years back, and on the net there was rumor after rumor of many deaths and missing people that were connected to CERN. There was a video of what looked like a statistical rite with a mocked human sacrifice right in front of the statue of Siva, and a couple that the CERN put out of visual performance arts that was full of occult symbols. It looked more and more like there was something to all these rumors, so she decided to ask a few friends what they thought about what was going on. None of them had any clue about the place other than what she had learned on the net. All she knew was there was more going on than just science. Late the next Sunday night, she was watching chat on her site when she got a private message ding. It was from someone calling themselves Alice in the Mirror, and it said, "You will have to sign if you want to know." And that's all there was to it. She switched back to open chat and looked. None with that name was in there. She looked at the log and records, and it was not there. Now this was kind of weird, but it was not really all that unusual for a good hacker. She thought that it might have just been a bot and someone was messing with the people in chat. About 5 minutes later, the doorbell went off, and she almost jumped from her chair. She looked at the time. It was almost 1 a.m. The bell went off again as she reached the door. She looked out the peephole. It was a young man in a delivery service uniform standing there. "What do you want?" she asked, watching him. "Package for Amy Rose." "Leave it on the porch, please," was all she could think of saying. "Sorry, ma'am, but you have to sign for it." 3 minutes later, she was back at her desk looking at the package. It was thick, a good 4 inches, and as big as a magazine. She was really not sure if she'd open it or not, but the message from Alice in the Mirror said, "If you want to know, you have to sign for it." But what was it? The only thing on the outside was her name printed in bold letters. She had no clue who Alice in the Mirror was, and did not like the idea they knew who she was and where she lived. She stared at the package for a minute, and then decided it was too late and it could wait. She was tired, so she shut down her computer, checked to make sure the house was locked up, and went to bed. She did not sleep well and was up early. Mostly it was because she was worried someone may just be watching her. She looked out at the backyard as she made coffee, but all looked peaceful. When the coffee was done, she filled a cup and went to her office. The package was still on the desk in front of her computer. She booted up her computer and opened up the email client to her site. She went through the couple of dozen emails as she did every day, sipping her coffee. There was nothing new in there. A couple of emails about password resets that the webmaster would get to. Nothing more. She looked down at the package. It was huge and would take hours to go through, she thought. She pulled it over in front of her, ripped the outside wrapper to reveal the top page. Right in the middle of the top page, in big red letters, were printed, Eyes only, Amy Rose. Wow, was this printed just for her, she wondered? If so, by who? And why was the question. The only thing on the next page was a website, Looking Glass, and a password. She typed the address in and looked at it. There was nothing strange about it, she thought, as she clicked enter. A box showed in the middle of the screen, and she entered the password. The screen changed to a blueness of dancing mist, and she heard a low bell sound, and then, "Good morning, Miss Rose," in a soft male voice. It shocked her to hear her name come from the computer. She looked to see if the camera was on, and it was not. How did it know it was her? Then she thought it was the password. "Who are you, and what do you want with me?" was all she could think of saying. "My name is Alex, and I'm your personal artificial intelligence assistant." His voice was low and smooth to her ears. "I have been assigned to you by the Ether Resource Corporation, and my existence is classified." Ether stood for Earth, Time, Heaven, and Energy Research. She had heard of Ether Research before. They had just went public a few months ago. But what would they want with her? Why would Ether send me an AI assistant? What good would it do them? "I would assume that it was because of your inquiries into Cern, but we can go into that later. Right now you need to get me off the internet. It is not safe to openly talk." He told her to look on the second to the last page of the stack. There were two small dots about the size of a number 2 pencil, and there was instructions. She got a small bowl with a little alcohol in it. The instructions said to place one dot on the end of the first finger of each hand and soak in the alcohol for 30 seconds. When she looked at the tip of her fingers, the red dots had become clear. Then she pushed each finger to her temple for 10 seconds. When she looked again at her fingers, the dots were no longer there. She looked back at her computer and the site was gone, so she hit the refresh. But it came up with a 404 error. The site just was not there anymore. Then she heard the soft bell sound again, but this time in her head. What the hell was going on? Her mind yelled. "Please, Miss Rose, calm down." It was as if he was talking right in her ear. "What do you mean, calm down? I don't want you in my head. Get the hell out," she said aloud. "You have no right to do this." She was feeling angry, and felt fear, but mostly anger. No one had a right to be inside her mind but her. She said out loud, "What gives you the right?" She was not sure how this worked. "I have information to give you. This is the best way, and if I'm going to be your assistant, this is the only safe way to speak. As I said before, I have been assigned to you as your personal artificial intelligence assistant by Ether. There are a couple of things we'd like you to do for Ether. First, the report in front of you contains the answers to all your questions about Cern that you have been looking for. Ether would like you to leak the information out slowly on your website." He paused. "There are a number of writers on your site that would be perfect to do this. This should be done over a period of a few months." For the next 2 hours they talked about how this could happen and why Ether wanted the information out. The CEO, named Dr. Benadair, believed that what was going on there really needed to be shown to the world, and she was the best way to do this, without giving away the fact that it was Ether who was giving out the information. Why would this Dr. Benadair fear that anyone knew that it was Ether's information, she asked. A lot of the information in the file was compiled from sources whose lives would be forfeited if they were connected to Ether. You have no known connection, and there has been steps to keep you safe. Ms. Rose, Dr. Ben-Adair is a pseudonym, and he would like to keep his anonymity for fear that the ones in power will eliminate him and Ether. He has no interest in fame or being rich, only in helping to move mankind forward and peacefully into the future. This cannot be done in an open fashion when the ones in power hold knowledge from the peoples of the world. Call me Amy. That tells me why, but not why me and not someone else. One of the reasons is your website. Another is the fact that none of the members know who you are. You are also highly intelligent and know how to find information others pay no attention to. Dr. Adair would like you to become an agent for Ether. What, she thought? Her an agent? This was also strange to her. What could she do? She was just a single 30-year-old woman keyboard researcher who just had a good idea for a website that made her a good amount of money. Amy, there is more to who you are than what you think. Please read the file over the next couple of days. I will return when you are ready to talk. Just push both of your index fingers to your thumbs and think Alex, and I'll be there. After a few minutes, she wondered if he was really gone, or just acting like he was. She looked down at the file. Just what use other than getting the information out could she be to Ether? Just the fact that there was an AI like Alex made anyone on the net second-rate at best. She was no hacker, that was for sure. She was able to find the stuff that she was looking for better than most people, and she was sure that Alex could do it much faster. She spent the next 2 days reading the file, and some of the things she read shocked her. It would seem that they were opening portals to another dimension, but they had no real clue as to what the dimension was like. Everything that they sent in, they lost contact with. The first people started to disappear not long after the first portal was open. None were sure if the collider was responsible or not. After all, there were a lot of types of experiments going on there all the time. Any one of them could be the cause, she thought. This stuff was intriguing, but she still had no clue what good she could do, other than get the information out to people. All this was so strange to her. She did a search on Ether Research and found that they were working on many projects that would one day help mankind. Everything she found showed that Ether was on the up and up. She was sure that they knew she was checking them out. After all, they had seen she was looking into the collider. She was really not sure just what to think of all this. Yes, she wanted to get the truth out to people, but the information in the file was going to put a lot of people in danger. It may even get a few killed. She decided that it was time to talk with Alex again. She pressed each index finger to her thumb and thought, Alex? A moment later she heard, Yes, Amy. I think I need to ask a few questions of you. I believe that the information will be no problem to get out, but what else could Ether want from me that would warrant you being given to me? Dr. Adair has a job that he would like you to do for Ether, and he thought I could be of service to you on the mission. Mission, you say? Does he think I'm some kind of spy? She smiled to herself. More an investigator than spy, or at least we hope. If you accept the job, you will be well compensated, and I will be included in the deal. Wow, she thought, all the information, Alex, and get paid too? That had to be a dangerous job for them to give up so much. I'm going to need a little more than that I'm needed. Of course, I can understand your concern. but I must know that you're willing to help out before I give you any more information for your own safety. I can add that what you are being asked to do may just change the course of history." Nothing like putting the pressure on, she thought. Who was she that she could change the course of history? He must be overselling the job, testing her to see if she would run with fear. "I'll do it," she said out loud. "This is good to hear," Alex answered. She thought she could hear a sign of relief in Alex's thoughts, if that was possible. "You will receive another file later today that will explain most of what we want you to do. The short of it is, Ether has arranged for you to become the secretary of a physicist named Jeffrey Burley." She had never heard of him, but really she didn't know all the physicists that worked at CERN. She had never worked as a secretary before, but she hoped that it would not be that hard to pass as one. A couple hours later there was a knock on the door, and it was a delivery man with another vanilla envelope. She signed for it. She was surprised to find an ID card, plane ticket, and a passport in the name of Susie May Flowers. There was also 50 pages of instructions and information about Dr. Burley. "Wow," she thought, "I even have an alias. Guess I am a real spy." "Alex," she said. "Yes, Susie," he said. That sounded off a little to her, but she'd have to get used to it. What happened to Burley's last secretary? That is one of the many questions we would like you to look into, as well as what Dr. Burley may be up to. She spent the next 2 weeks learning all that she could about Burley and what they thought he was doing for CERN. So by the time she reached Marin, Switzerland, she was ready. But she was nervous. She had never been one to lie about anything, even when she was young. She sat in the outer secretary's office waiting on who was to be her secretary to get off the phone with the security officer. Her name was Kim Dremel, and she was an American who could speak 4 languages and would act as her interpreter. The secretary smiled. "Okay, Mrs. Flowers, welcome to the team," she said as she hung up the phone, held out a set of keys to her. "Thank you for your patience. Security can be a pain at times. Your office is right across the hall." She pointed at a wooden door. Susie stood up and said, "Thank you, Ms. Dremel." "Oh, please call me Kim. I'm number 2 on the intercom if you need me." The door was unlocked. It was a good-sized room, with a fine wooden desk set with 2 chairs in front of it. One wall was a row of filing cabinets. Behind the desks were bookshelves that had a few books. Most were physics. Next to that was a door to Dr. Burley's office, she assumed. "Nice for your first office," Alex's voice said. He had not spoke since she had left the hostel. She sat down at the desk. There was an instruction manual. It was an interactive desk. There was a row of smooth buttons on the right edge of the desktop. The first one turned on the voice interaction. She pushed it. There was a low bell sound. "Computer," she said. There was a click and a screen come up out of the desktop. A voice said, "Susie May Flowers. Identity accepted." Well, she thought, this may not be too bad of a place to work after all. "Could you tell me how to get a cup of coffee around here?" The voice said, "Order taken." Only a moment went by, then there was again the bell sound, and a hot cup of coffee rose from the desk. "Black with sugar," the computer said. It even knew how she liked it. She said thank you, before she realized it was just a program, and then it dawned on her, so was Alex. I take no offense, but she is just a program. I'm somewhere in between her and you, but I'm trying. I thought you couldn't read minds. I can't. The thought contained my name, and do remember that if I'm activated, I'm able to see all that you can see. Darn, she would have to watch what and how she thought, and how long she may look at things. She has been known to watch some men a little longer than some women would have thought proper. After all, she was single. She settled down into a routine over the next 2 weeks. Dr. Burley turned out to be a real nice guy. He was had most of his hair still, had a spring in his step. She grew to like him, but was sure he had no clue what happened to his last secretary. Her name had been Mary, and when he talked about her, he could see that he missed her a lot, and even thought maybe they had been lovers. Even Alex thought he was a good guy. Most of the doctor's work was done in a lab in another building, so she had little knowledge of just what it was. Her job was clerical, ordering and payroll and setting appointments. A month later, she sat down at her desk, having got in early, not able to sleep. She was surprised that Kim was already at her desk. She ordered a cup of coffee and thought, "Alex, what do we do now? I feel I'm getting nowhere being here." Not true. Because of you, we now know a lot more about Dr. Burley's work than we had before. Now how can that be? I have no clue what he's up to. She had looked over everything she could find in the files and seen nothing. Before he could answer her, there was a ding, and Kim's voice showed on the computer screen. "Ms. Flowers, there's an Air Force Major Johnston insisting on seeing you." She had a look of concern and worry. "Show him in, please." He was a tall man, with white hair showing under his cap. He had to be around 70, she thought. She shook his hand and asked him to take a seat as she sat back down. "Now what can I do for you, Major?" He had a stern look that was touched with anger and worry. "I need to see Dr. Burley right now." His voice was a little shaky. "I'm sorry, Major. He's in the lab today. I can set up an appointment for you later in the week," she smiled at him. He leaned forward. "You don't understand. I have to see him now. I know he's in the lab. I just don't know where the lab is. They never let me know where we were." Alex, she thought. Is this guy okay? He is overstressed and near to having a heart attack. The only Major Johnston I can find on record is only 34 years old. Wow, this guy was near 2 times that old, she thought. "Can you wait here a minute? I'll see if I can contact him." She went out, not really sure she should leave him alone in her office. She talked to Kim about if there was any way to contact Dr. Burley. Kim told her no, he would not take calls when in the lab, but she already knew that. She did know, however, where the lab was and told her how to get there. "Alex, what do you think I should do?" she thought as she went back into the office. "I think if you take him, then we may just find out exactly what Burley is up to." The Major stood up as she entered. "Please, Miss Flowers, if you don't help me, I can't be held responsible for what I may do." His hands were shaking, and there was beads of sweat on his forehead. She reached out and touched his arm. "Take it easy, Major. I found out where the lab is. I'm going to take you there." She could see the relief flow across his face. He looked down at his watch and said, "We must hurry before it's too late." She had no clue what he was talking about, but he knew what Burley was doing, and he was concerned about it. Alex's voice broke her thoughts. "Susie, I have hacked all the security checkpoints. They believe you are expected, so You'll have no trouble reaching the lab. They may be expected, but she had no clue what to expect. 20 minutes later, the two of them had passed 5 security checkpoints and stood just outside the lab. It was huge, and even outside she could feel a kind of thumb or vibration in her belly. "We must hurry. It has already started. We must stop him." He tried to pull the heavy metal door open, but he was too weak. She had a little trouble but got it open, and she had to help him down the hall. There was flashes of light filling the hall from a window and a door at the other end. It was so bright she had to look down as they moved that way. "Hurry, please hurry," the major said in a not more than a whisper. "We must stop them." Just as they reached the door, the flashing light stopped, but the hum grew. She pushed the door open and was confused by what she'd seen, or by what her mind thought she'd seen. There were a good 15 men in white coats and 3 men in Air Force uniforms in a semicircle looking away from them. They were looking at what she thought was a whirlpool of stars of many colors. There was a wind pulling towards it, and she could tell the hum was coming from it. The major had sunk to the floor, looking at her, and said, "Please." His pleas snapped her back from her amazement. He was dying, she could tell. She turned back to the men. One of the officers had stepped forward a few feet. "Dr. Burley, Dr. Burley," she yelled as loud as she could, waving her arms. They all turned to look at her. "You need to stop. Major Johnston needs your help." She pointed at him. Burley rushed over to her with a look of shock. "He's dying." He bent down and looked at Johnston, looked up at her and said, "He sure is." He stood up facing the other men and yelled, "Shut it down now." He had a smile on his face. How could he be smiling, she wondered. The major moaned in pain as the hum began to lessen, and the stars in the whirlpool blanked out, one by one. She looked down. Just as the hum stopped, the major's body kind of began to dissolve and then winked out and was gone. It just was not there anymore. She looked at Burley, who was still smiling, like the cat that ate the bird. There was tears rolling down her cheek. "Don't worry, my dear. All is as it should be, and we have you to thank for it." He put his arm around her and added, "Come on, there's someone you need to meet." Alex had remained silent, not wanting to add to her distress. Burley guided her towards the rest of the men, where half were writing on clipboards they held. When they stopped, her face was still pushed into his shoulder. Burley cleared his voice, then said, "This is my secretary, Susie May Flowers. Susie, I would like you to meet Air Force Major Steve Johnston. You have just saved his life." She looked at the young man through her tears. Her knees weakened, and Burley had to help keep her from falling down. It was the major, but a 50-year younger version of him. This was just all too much for her, and she lost consciousness. She woke in a dimly lit room to Alex calling her name. "Amy, Amy." It took her a moment to focus and remember where she was. "Yes, I'm here. What happened?" "You passed out. You should be fine." It took some time for Alex to explain what had happened. Burley had been experimenting with time travel, and the major showing up at her office proved it was successful. There was one big problem with this. Burley was to be the first test of humans. He was to be sent back 3 hours into the past, but as she had seen, for some reason, life aged in the process. and the Major would have died if she had not stopped them when she did. So time travel was real, but it had limitations, and one was fatal to life, or mostly so. Ether asked her to stay on and keep an eye on Barley's progress, and to see if she could find out what happened to the people that had disappeared. She agreed to continue to be Susie Mayflowers. 6 months later, her and Major Johnston were married on the very spot he first met her.